Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. The stranger's words still echoing in the upscale restaurant. "Used goods," he'd said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. 29 years old, a successful marketing manager, and in that moment, she felt reduced to nothing more than her past, a divorced woman unworthy of a fresh start. The blind date had started awkwardly, as most do. Her friend Jessica had insisted that Marcus was perfect for her. Ambitious, well-traveled, came from a good family. What Jessica hadn't mentioned was his outdated views on relationships, or his disturbing obsession with a woman's value. 10 minutes into their conversation, when Sarah casually mentioned she'd been married before, Marcus's expression shifted from mild interest to barely concealed disgust. "You're divorced?" he'd asked, setting down his menu with an audible thud. "Jessica didn't tell me that." Sarah had dealt with this reaction before, but never so brazenly. She straightened her shoulders, trying to maintain her composure. "Yes, I was married for 3 years. It didn't work out." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning her with an assessment that made her skin crawl. "I don't date used goods," he announced, his voice carrying across the quiet dining room. "I want someone pure, someone who hasn't been damaged by another man. You understand, right? A man wants to be first." The words hit like a physical blow. Sarah felt the heat rise to her cheeks as several diners turned to stare. She wanted to stand up, throw her napkin down, and storm out with her dignity intact. But shock had frozen her in place, and worse, tears were threatening to betray her. "Excuse me?" A voice interrupted from the table beside them. Both Sarah and Marcus turned to see a man in his mid-30s, casually dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt, standing up from where he'd been sitting with a young girl who couldn't have been more than 7. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a steel that commanded attention. "I couldn't help but overhear," the man continued, moving closer to their table. His daughter watched with wide, curious eyes. "And I have to say that's the most ignorant thing I've heard in a long time." Marcus bristled. "This is a private conversation. Mind your own business." "I would, except you made it everyone's business when you decided to humiliate this woman in a public place." The stranger's voice remained level but firm. "I'm sitting here trying to teach my daughter about respect and kindness, and you're over here treating another human being like she's a commodity on a shelf. Who the hell do you think you are?" Marcus sputtered, his face reddening. "I'm Daniel, a single dad, and unlike you, I know that a person's worth isn't determined by their relationship history." He glanced at Sarah with kind eyes before turning back to Marcus. "You want to talk about used goods?" "I'm divorced too." "Does that make me damaged? Does that mean I have nothing to offer? Or does your ridiculous logic only apply to women?" Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is completely different. Men and women aren't the same." "You're right," Daniel cut him off. "They're not the same, but they deserve the same respect. And right now, you're showing none." He stepped closer, his voice dropping slightly. "I think you should leave. This woman deserves better than spending another minute listening to your nonsense." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the soft background music seemed to have paused. Sarah sat frozen, watching this stranger defend her with more conviction than anyone had in years. Marcus looked around, realizing he'd become the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. His jaw clenched, and for a moment, Sarah thought he might escalate the situation. Instead, he grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. "You can have her!" he spat at Daniel before storming toward the exit. Birds of a feather. The door swung shut behind him, and slowly, the normal sounds of the restaurant resumed. Daniel turned to Sarah, his expression softening with concern. "I'm sorry if I overstepped," he said quietly, "but I couldn't sit there and let him talk to you like that." Sarah finally found her voice, though it came out shakier than she wanted. "No, Thank you. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." Daniel smiled gently. "Are you okay?" Before Sarah could answer, his daughter appeared at his side, tugging on his sleeve. "Daddy, is the lady okay? That man was mean to her." Daniel crouched down to his daughter's level. "She's okay, sweetie." Sometimes grown-ups need to stand up for each other when someone's being unkind. The little girl looked at Sarah with solemn brown eyes. "My daddy says everyone deserves kindness. even on bad days. Something about the child's innocent wisdom broke through Sarah's carefully constructed walls. A tear escaped down her cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. Your daddy is very smart, and so are you. Daniel stood, placing a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. I'm sorry your evening got ruined. For what it's worth, that guy was completely out of line. His opinions say everything about him and nothing about you. Sarah nodded, trying to collect herself. She couldn't remember the last time someone had defended her so completely, expecting nothing in return. I appreciate that more than you know. Listen, Daniel said, seeming to make a decision. My daughter Emily and I are about to have dinner. Would you like to join us? No pressure, no expectations, just you shouldn't have to sit here alone after that. Sarah looked at this kind stranger and his sweet daughter, then at the empty chair across from her where Marcus had been sitting. She thought about going home, replaying the evening's humiliation in her mind, letting Marcus's words reinforce every insecurity she'd developed since her divorce. Or she could choose something different. I'd love to, she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. They settled at Daniel's table, and Emily immediately began chattering about her favorite foods and her dad's funny attempts at making pancakes. The tension in Sarah's shoulders gradually released as she laughed at Emily's animated stories and Daniel's self-deprecating humor. Over dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. Daniel explained that he'd been divorced for 2 years, that Emily's mother had left them for someone else. He spoke without bitterness, focusing instead on how the experience had taught him to appreciate the simple things: bedtime stories, Saturday morning cartoons, burnt pancakes eaten with his daughter. My ex used to tell me I'd never find someone else, Daniel admitted as Emily colored on the restaurant's kids' menu. That I came with too much baggage. For a while, I believed her. Sarah nodded slowly. My ex said similar things. That I was too focused on my career, that I'd end up alone because I wasn't traditional enough. And yet here we both are, Daniel said with a slight smile. Still standing. Still valuable. Still worthy of respect and love. The words settled over Sarah like a warm blanket. Here was someone who understood, not just intellectually, but deeply, what it meant to be made to feel less than whole. As the evening wound down, Emily had fallen asleep against her father's shoulder. Daniel carefully shifted her weight, preparing to leave. Thank you, Sarah said again. For tonight. For standing up when you didn't have to. Daniel looked at her seriously. Can I tell you something? My daughter is watching me every day, learning how people should treat each other. If I'd stayed silent tonight, I would have been teaching her that it's okay to let people be cruel, that women should accept being disrespected. I couldn't do that. He pulled out his phone with his free hand. I know this might seem forward after everything, but could I get your number? Not as a date necessarily, just, I think you're someone worth knowing, and maybe Emily and I could use a friend who understands. Sarah smiled. A real smile this time, one that reached her eyes. She took his phone and entered her number. I'd like that. As she watched Daniel carry his sleeping daughter out into the night, Sarah realized something had shifted. Marcus had tried to diminish her, to reduce her worth to his narrow definitions. But Daniel had reminded her of a simple truth. Her value wasn't determined by someone else's opinion. She was not used goods. She was a person with experiences, strength earned through challenges, wisdom gained from mistakes. She was someone worth defending, worth knowing, worth choosing. Walking to her car, Sarah felt lighter than she had in months. Sometimes, she thought, humanity shows up in unexpected places, in a stranger's courage, a child's simple wisdom, an act of kindness that asks for nothing in return. And sometimes, the worst moments lead to reminders of just how good people can be. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Made it home safely. Emily wanted me to tell you that you're nice and she hopes you're our friend now. Daniel. Sarah smiled in the darkness of her car and typed back, Tell Emily I'm honored. And thank you again for everything. Some nights change everything. This was one of those nights.